Good morning, boys and girls. Today, our lesson is going to be over the life cycle of a frog. Now, before we dive into our lesson today, we need to know the important vocabulary associated with the life cycle of a frog. Now, before we do that, I want to give you guys our objective and our TEK. Our TEK is coming from 3.10c, and it states to investigate and compare how animals and plants undergo a series of orderly changes in their diverse life cycles, such as a tomato plant, frog, and a ladybug. Now, our objective is students will name in order the stages of a frog's life cycle. Now, before we can talk about the life cycle of a frog, we need to know the important vocabulary associated with it. Now, our vocabulary word is going to be life cycle, and life cycle means sequential stages of growth and development that an organism goes through in its lifetime. Now, before we begin, we need to get what? Organized. Exactly right. We need to get organized. So in order to get organized, we need three things. We need an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Again, we need an introduction, we need a body, and we need a conclusion. Now, okay, so what we're going to do first, we're going to draw our two lines. There's line number 1, and there's line number 2. Now, the first line is our introduction, the middle part is our body, and the bottom is going to be our conclusion. Now, with the introduction is a description. It's a description of who, which is the subject, and what about, okay? So our subject is going to be life cycle. So life cycle is our subject. We can either write an S, and we have our equal signs. And what it's about, it's going to be the life cycle of a what? A frog. So we will write frog here. Okay, so our introduction is a description. Now when we move to our body, we need to draw a picture, label the parts, and tell the function of the parts. So I'm going to do that again. We draw a picture, label the parts, and tell the functions of the parts. So we will move up here. Ms. Barton isn't an artist, so what I did was I placed the different cycles of a frog's life. So if you guys will follow along with me, the first cycle is the egg cycle. Come in a little closer, please. Thank you. It's the egg cycle, and it almost looks like the magnet that's holding the piece there. Now, after the egg cycle, we move to the tadpole cycle. And the tadpole cycle, it looks like the egg is still there, but it grows a little tail, which helps it to swim. Now, after the tadpole cycle, we go here to the froglet cycle. Froglet. Now the froglet cycle still has the little tail to help it swim, but it grows 2 legs. After the froglet cycle, the frog becomes a young frog. So it has 4 legs, but it still has the little tail. After the young frog cycle, the final cycle is the adult frog cycle. And that cycle has 4 legs, and it no longer has the little tail to help it swim. So you can draw these things into the body of our organizer. So we have our introduction, and this will be considered as our body. And now we'll move to our conclusion. And what our conclusion is, it's our vocabulary word. We're going to restate our vocabulary word, and we're going to define it in our own words. We're going to use different words. So the life cycle of the vocabulary word that we used is the life cycle of a frog. So life cycle, we already talked about that, means sequential stages of growth and development that an organism goes through in its lifetime. So for our conclusion, we'd have to state that another way, and that would simply be what our conclusion is. Now, as far as something else we need to understand besides the vocabulary associated with it, we need to understand the 5 stages of the life cycle of a frog, which is a part of our body. And I wanted to let you guys know as well that in the introduction, it gives you the vocabulary word. It tells you the subject. Our subject is our life cycle. And our description is the what about. And what our subject is about is the frog. So it's the life cycle of a frog. Now, we draw our pictures, and once we label the parts, we are describing. So if we want to add fancy words, we can do that as well in the body of our organizer. Now, so we've got our introduction, we've gotten our body, we've gotten our conclusion, and we're going to move on to our final assignment. So I hope you guys learned something, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hands. And that's it.